call the order of the regular planning commission meeting of, I guess it's 3/9/2023. If we'd all stand with our pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I thank everybody for that. Susan, if you would take the roll for us.
Noel.
Here.
Turner.
Here.
Mr. Hunwick and Mr. Bailey are absent. Ballard.
Here.
Spiz.
Present.
Berger.
Present.
There is a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, noting the roll, we have to have approval of the agenda this evening. Would someone like to do that for us?
I'll move to approve the agenda for Thursday, March 9th, 2020.
Moved by Mr. Spiz and supported by Mr. Knoll to approve the agenda for this meeting tonight. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any members of this commission that feel there are any conflicts on anything that we're going to do or discuss this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on. We need approval of the minutes from the Planning Commission regular meeting of 2/23/2023.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the Planning Commission regular meeting minutes dated February 23rd, 2023.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Knoll and supported by Mr. Spiz to approve the Planning Commission meeting minutes of 2/23/23. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? I see none. Are there any commissioners' comments before we start this evening's meeting? Well, excuse me. Forgot public comments. Is there anyone that would like to speak from the public that's not regarding something on tonight's meeting? If you would like to do that, you would want to get up now. Okay, I'm seeing none. Sorry, commissioners, now it's us, our turn. If anybody has any comments as a commission person here.
None at this time.
Seeing none at this time, okay. We're going to move on to our public hearing. We have our presenter here, which is representing the township, and I believe that we're going to have the presentation by the petitioner, which is us. So, we need to open the public hearing. I thought it was open the public hearing after.
Okay, based on this. I'm sorry.
Why are you trying to mess with me?
I'm used to doing it differently.
We're going to open the public hearing after we have our person get up and discuss what we're doing for this evening.
Good evening, Planning Commission. So I do want to clarify that this is actually initiated by your current approved marijuana provisioning centers. They did go to the Township Board, who requested that it be sent to Planning Commission for consideration. What's before you tonight are ordinance amendments that have been requested to allow the existing, the existing medical provisioning centers to opt into adult use marijuana retail. It will only apply to your 3 existing facilities that have been previously approved. So I'm available for any questions on that, but I'm sure all the petitioners will speak as to why they're requesting this amendment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for her at this time while she was up there? I guess I should have asked that question
Well,
first.
I can come back.
No, I don't see anybody asking any right now, so that's okay. Now we are going to need a motion to open the public hearing for this evening's agenda.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing at 7:06.
I'll second.
I have a motion to open the public hearing and supported by Mr. Spiz. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Now we can have public testimony if there's people who would like to get up and talk in regards to what we're amending for the ordinance this evening.
Good evening. My name is Tom DiAugustino. I'm the sole owner of Lifted Investment 3, and I'm here to ask you to make a recommendation to the Township Board to approve the text amendment to authorize the addition of adult use cannabis sales in the community. Excuse me, I'm having a little trouble. In preparing for tonight, I've done a little research, and I was surprised to learn that the township actually began down the path to adopting medical cannabis sales some time ago. When the previous township supervisor, Bill Dunn, was asked why he was going to go down this road at a meeting, He said 63% of the people voted in favor of this, and I'm going to listen to the voice of the community. So in 2021, the township did make a commitment to the community to allow three medical marijuana provisioning centers to be opened and operated here in the community. I have been authorized to operate one of these facilities and will be operating out of the Mazda Auto facility, which has been vacant and dilapidated for a number of years. By the time the renovations are completed, we estimate the cost of renovation to create a state-of-the-art facility to be about $2.2 million. Unlike the township, the village opted out of medical sales, so you cannot purchase medical marijuana in the village, making these three dispensaries in the community, the township, the only dispensaries this community has access to for medical marijuana. When we started down this road sometime in late 2020, early 2021, medical marijuana as a product was a viable option in this industry. In the short period of time since we began in 2021, late 2020, and the time that the community adopted this ordinance, the retail value of marijuana has dropped 64%. Retail sales have dropped 62%. The problem has become so precipitous that the Cannabis Regulatory Agency is now considering changing its regulations and allowing cultivators who are growing medical marijuana to change their entire inventory to recreational sales. All of this has created a very difficult situation for those who are in the medical-only dispensary operation. Those communities who have not opted into recreational or to adult use that did have medical use only have seen those medical use facilities close out and close their doors. We have made a commitment to the community to honor the commitment that the township has made to the community to allow the sale of medical marijuana. We have our own cultivation facility, and we will cultivate and produce medical cannabis to be sold in our dispensaries. We need the cooperation of the community to allow us to be successful in our commitment and to help the township honor the commitment made to the community as well. By opting in to the adult use, we both will be able to share in that responsibility to adopt and to fulfill the commitment. In addition, you may know that the adult use cannabis bears a 10% excise tax. 15% of that tax is shared with those municipalities who have opted into adult use sales. In the 3 years since the regulation of the tax revenues have been shared, the revenue distribution has tripled. And it's anticipated in 2022 that the municipalities who've opted in will receive approximately $72,000 per facility that's authorized to operate within their community. The sale of adult use cannabis has skyrocketed, and it's anticipated that will be the direction that cannabis will go, with expected revenues to increase as well. We're simply asking you to adopt or make the recommendation for the adoption of this ordinance to allow for the sale of adult use. While there is significant difference between medical marijuana, as you may know, the THC content in medical marijuana oftentimes is substantially lower than it is in the adult use, but the other component, which escapes me right now, is substantially higher, which provides therapeutic value. But the stigma associated with the sale of marijuana in the communities is gone. The statewide has adopted adult use. We would ask you to make that recommendation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and I would like to come back maybe during the open forum in the event some comments are made that I would want to be able to respond to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mark James. I'm here with Frequency Wellness, LLC. I'm not going to belabor the point. Mr. D'Agostino made a very compelling argument, and I'm going to rely on what he said in support of Frequency Wellness's request that this commission recommend the adoption of the changes to the ordinance. I too am available for any questions. I'd just like to keep it short and sweet for you this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is David Rice with Curative LLC, and I do echo Tom's comments. I just would ask you to pass the ordinance to go to recreational sales, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll try not to repeat anything, but if you'll indulge me, I made a few notes just so I don't lose my train of thought here. It's something
Can
that's
you tell us who you are, please?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Andy Burbage, Watersmeet Drive, Oxford.
Thank you.
I'm here today to join the other voices in wholeheartedly expressing my support for approving the addition of recreational sales at the already approved medical dispensaries here in the township. Township has already taken the bold but right step of approving medical use centres, providing us with safe and dignified shopping locations where patients can come and get their medicine. However, with the changes we've heard about to operational and financial aspects of the cannabis market, local businesses will struggle to survive without both medical and recreational sales. In order not only to ensure continued medicinal availability, but also the viability of the local businesses and thus employment opportunities for township residents, not to mention income to the local community. I hope you'll agree it makes sense all around to expand the licensing to cover both medical and recreational sales. Our duty is to allow residents to seek medical relief where they can, and not to impede their recreational choices where there's no real reason to live and let live. Plenty of other communities and states have shown this is absolutely a workable model, offering a win-win for all parties, and to deny our community the chance to do likewise would be unfair, unjust, unwarranted, and pretty much without merit. As a long time and proud resident of this and the original Oxford, I simply want to urge I want my fellow residents to be afforded the opportunity to live their lives as they choose. So I strongly urge you to move forward and vote yes on the additional of recreational sales in Oxford. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'd like to make a quick comment. If I should have announced a little earlier, if anybody that's in attendance tonight would help us out, if you could sign in the sign-in sheet too before you leave, or now, or when you feel comfortable, if you do that, it helps us to know who's here this evening. So if there's anyone else that would like to speak, please come up now. Want to make sure, is there anyone else who would like to speak, please? Thank you.
I see a sea of yellow t-shirts, so I was waiting for all of you to speak. Good evening, Mary Ann Keynes. I'm from the Stony Lake Village Waterstone community here in Oxford. And unfortunately, although I can respect all the individuals here seated on the left-hand side of the conference room with the yellow t-shirts on, my viewpoint is a little bit different. My concern is how things are being handled. When the township voted for marijuana use, we were promised certain things. For instance, we were looking at the industrial zoned parcels that were going to be used for medical or recreational marijuana dispensaries, retailers, whatever you want to term those type of facilities. And that's already been broken. And we were told that it would stay away from residential areas and schools. And now that's being broken. So when we go back and say the township is looking to promote and approve marijuana use within the township and the village, that is true. But when we voted for that, there were different conditions that we were told were going to take place than what is now taking place. So if people had to vote again, knowing what we know now, none of us always have that fortune teller, sense, but I think it might be a little bit different. And what concerns me is that we establish ordinances so that our activities in the township can follow that verbiage. Not that they can't be changed down the road, but what I'm seeing happen is that we're changing the ordinance based on activities from developers that are coming into the area. And I'm not sure that's proper, and that's kind of putting the cart before the horse. So that's kind of my concern, is how things are being approached regarding this. And I do kind of take a look at the point is, and I know we have legal representation here this evening, but also many places when you want to do recreation now versus medical, you would have to resolicit. in order to make it fair for all cannabis industries that may want to come into the township on a recreational basis versus medical. So I'm not sure if this is the legal way of approaching this, saying now that we have medical, we're going to do recreational coincide with each other, and we're changing the ordinance in order to make that happen. Would the legal process be better, and would it be more right for us to resolicit and open this up again for anyone that had an industry and a business that wanted to do recreational? And I kind of am in the viewpoint as everything would change, and we've heard already about the cannabis industry in general, is that probably in 5 years from now, we'll probably walk into Meijer, you'll have an authorization card, you go to a vending machine, you put the card in, you're going to get your cannabis out. So I think the brick and mortar industry right now with cannabis and having those physical structures are probably going to soon be obsolete the way we're moving in this industry. So this might all be OBE very soon. But I do feel like the one of the 3 parcels, which you've heard me fight this before, is the one next to the fire station. Is there is a residential area right there, and on the other side of that wall is there a children's playscape. And then you have a school across the street. So now when we talk medical, okay, now you're talking recreational and medical, which is going to increase traffic and increase things in the neighborhood. And we were told that these type of businesses would not be around residential areas. So that one in particular is not as commercial as the other 2. So that's our concern in regarding that one location in particular. But thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do I have anyone else who would like to get up and speak at this time? I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone else who would like to get up and speak at this time? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion to close the public hearing. Oh, I apologize. I put the letter in front of me and I didn't read it. I did get a letter sent to me from Cheryl Lotan, from a lady.
Mr. Chair, point of order, we have that as item number 6 on your review of correspondence.
But if it's, I believe it should be read into the record of
Very
public hearing, the way I interpret it.
Typically, you would do it in the review of correspondence.
Wait until review of correspondence, typically.
Yeah,
Thank you
that's
for your,
what that's for.
thank you for your assistance, okay. Review of correspondence right here. I'll just keep it on the screen, and then I'll look for a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing at 7:19.
Second.
I have a motion to close the public hearing, and a second by Mr. Nolan, seconded by Mr. Spiz. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, now I'm looking for any comments from the township's consultant and staff, so I think, the way I'm looking at this, well, I'm looking at Megan. But I don't know if you have any comments in regards to this.
No, we don't have any comments at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think Mr. Sharp does either. And I don't think anybody else does in front of me right now. Now we are at review of correspondence, which should be reading in the record a letter that was sent by a lady named Patty Karen. And it was received Monday, February 27th. It says, Dear Mr. Berger, I'm ready to oppose another dispensary in Oxford. As a concerned Oxford citizen, I'm worried about the number of dispensaries and when is enough. As a director of oncology program, I have sympathy for those who require medical marijuana for health concerns and know they're a small minority of the users in a commercial dispensary. With mental health issues at a high record, I'm worried that many of our teens may have easier access to use to, I must have part of this thing off the record here a little bit, there, to cure their anxiety or think of it may help in their depression. It is too close to neighborhoods where our children walk and ride bikes. With all of that Oxford has been through, let's look at bringing establishments which benefit our entire community. Does anyone remember the numerous accidents at the proposed location when it used to be McDonald's? Someone should pull the data. Thank you for your consideration and appreciation, Patty. And that's Patty Karen at this time. So that's read into the record as of this date. Now we have commissioner's discussion.
Chair, if there's no other commissioners' comments, I'd like to make a motion.
All right, we can make a motion and then we can discuss the motion if we had to. Go ahead.
I move to recommend approval to the Oxford Township Board of Trustees of the amendment to the Oxford Charter Township zoning ordinance 67A, section 2.2, 3.40, 3.5J, and 5.35A through D.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion made by Mr. Knoll, and I think it was clear what he read. Everybody, I believe I just glanced at my notes here from this evening to make sure I followed what he said. And I have support by Mr. Ballard. Is there any discussion from the planning commission members at this time? Because it would be my, of the motion. I see no comments. Susan, I'd like roll call vote, please.
Certainly. Ballard,
Yes.
Spiz,
No.
Turner,
Yes.
Knoll,
Yes.
Berger.
Yes.
Motion passed.
We have no unfinished business, new business tonight. With
For everybody in the crowd, you want to tell them what the next steps are,
recommendation of the township board.
what their steps they have.
From what just occurred, this recommendation now goes to the township board. From the PC, it was assigned to us from the township board, now it goes back to the township board. So there's still another meeting to be held in regards to this. 2 more meetings,
First reading and second.
first and second reading, thank you for that comment. That's what Mr. Spiz was relating to.
Yeah, I just want to make sure everybody's aware of the next steps to this. You guys are more than willing to stay for the next part of the meeting, but it's up to you.
I'm gonna wait a minute.
Yeah.
Real quick.
It's good timing. Yeah.
Oh, well, I know that, I got that, I know that for sure, so. No, I think we can Tuesday. I'll take it down one more time, let's just see what happens, I don't wanna get totally out of whack. All right, I think the meeting's cleared up, the board was cleared enough. We have,
Mr. Chair, may I suggest, Cheryl, if we'd be kind enough to close that door, trying to keep the noise out, please? Thank you.
take it down small. That's enough right there, they can be that proud. All right, I see that we're quieting down, so let's unfinished business, which we have none on the agenda this evening, and for new business, we have a couple things, and one of them is we have some appointments that we need to make for the committee assignments, and so for committee assignments, I am, I'm assigning John Knoll, Ed Hunwig, and Tom Berger to the ORC with Bob Turner as an alternate. I'm assigning to the Economic Development Committee Corey Bailey, Justin Ballard, and Robert Turner. Corey Bailey will be the liaison from the PC to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and John Knoll will be the liaison from the Township Planning Commission to the Village Planning Commission. And those are the only assignments that I need to make this evening in regards to those committees. So I think everybody has their role now. We can get back on track. We do have another ORC meeting coming up in the near future. And then the gentleman that was just assigned to the Economic Development Committee, he should probably get together at a timetable that works for everyone. Come to the conference room and have a meeting once to get associated with who you are and what the meeting is. And then we'll see how it heads down the road with the necessity to hold any of those meetings. So next we have the new business tonight, which is PC 23-001, 411 North Oxford Road, applicant Kemp Building and Development this evening. So is there someone here to represent them? Thank you.
How you doing? Ian Hurst, Kemp Building. Good to see you again, Tom.
Yeah, it's nice.
Been a while.
It has been a while, Ian. I haven't seen you.
I'm around.
Well, looks like it. Good.
Any questions? It's pretty straightforward. Renovating that building, no change in footprint.
I have questions, but I think I want to start with PC members first. I mean, I think we all know what you're trying to do. It's an existing building.
Correct.
It's owned in the I-1 district. It's about a 3-acre parcel. It's an odd-shaped piece, but it does comply to the lot width areas that we need, and the lot width and the areas that we need. The building is actually conforming by side yard setbacks and front yard, rear yard setbacks and such. That the only improvements that was originally brought forward for renovation was to create parking spaces for the building, and then also divide the building into 4, which we would have 4 different units, and they were on the plans as A, B, C, and D, and then parking with door entrances for a quadrant here, a quadrant here, a quadrant here, and a quadrant here. So as we look at the documents, and we go down through this, and we get a little bigger, our entranceway is actually on the north side of the property currently, and then you have a proposed driveway coming in, going to the rear, and then parking spaces in the rear, and coming around the corner and going to the last quadrant, which is really the southeast quadrant of the building right here. So I have concerns on some questions that I would like to talk about this evening. And I'm not sure what other planning commissions want to start, but I'll start with anything.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
you should probably hear from your consultants first.
Oh, Megan, I'm so sorry. I told Susan to keep me straight. You're doing great.
Well, I appreciate.
We knew we had a report for some reason.
Right. Well, you've done a great job describing the site. And the main reason that this is here and it's not an administrative review is the increase to the parking lot. So it's more than 20%, so it needs to come to Planning Commission. As you may be aware, they are proposing to redo the roof and also to put a new facade around all sides of the building. Just want to note that this is adjacent to the village to the south. And to assisted living community, which qualifies as a residential, and that'll come into play a little bit later. As the chair said, that the site complies as proposed with all area width, height, and setbacks, even though it's an odd-shaped lot. Some of those dimensions were not provided on the site plan. So in terms of final site plan, those would need to be provided, and we ask that that be a condition of any approval if you should feel so inclined to do that. It doesn't appear that there's any access management issues, and we defer to the township engineer and the fire chief on site access and circulation as well, and I think both of them have comments dealing with that. In terms of parking, there are 2 regulations for parking, the square footage, and it has a computation, and also the number of employees. The applicant did not provide the number of employees, and because they have 4 speculative spaces, that may not necessarily be realistic at this point. So what we have recommended is that you look at approving, if you feel so inclined to approve, the parking spaces as presented with the condition that there be no more than 13 employees. And that is the computation where that 20 spaces would work. I also know, in talking to some planning commissioners today, they were concerned about where barrier-free spaces are. If more were added, that might detract from a number of, that may take out a number of parking spaces because of the access aisles. So if you feel strongly about that, tabling or postponing may be a better option for the applicant to go back and figure that out, and so that they have enough parking spaces that comply, but they also are complying with barrier-free regulations as much as possible. Also, in terms of parking, there is another finding that you need to make. All the parking spaces that border the yard are only 18 feet deep. That is allowed under your zoning ordinance if the planning commission grants that waiver. So that's something that you need to do. I would hope that you would give the applicant some indication if you choose to postpone or table about whether you feel that that's appropriate or not. And then if you go to approve, then to make a finding that that is part of the motion, that you're approving the parking as it's presented. The landscaping and screening complies overall. However, section 7.3A requires screening between a residential use and that assisted living facility, as I mentioned earlier, to the south, that qualifies as a residential use. However, if you've been out to the site, you'll see that there's a fence that separates the two. Per the survey, that is on the assisted living facility side, but also there's a lot of topography. It's almost like the berm stopped and then flattened out for this subject site. So that topography and that fence together create a screen already. Then the question is additional screening or in terms of another fence or arborvitae or evergreen screening appropriate? If you felt like it was not, then you could find that you accept the landscaping as is based on topographic features or unique features of the site that create conditions that strict application of the landscape regulations would result in a less effective screen, or that the public benefit of the landscape regulations could be better achieved with a plan that varies. You could also find that parking, vehicular circulation, or land use are such that the required landscaping would not enhance the site or the desired effect. With the way that the circulation is on site and the way that the windows are, I don't think that that's necessary. The windows of the assisted living facility, I don't think necessarily that would be the best finding. I think either the first two I mentioned would probably be the more likely finding that would back up any waiver if you so chose to do it. In terms of lighting, they do comply. However, the lighting intensity at the driveway at that future right-of-way line, which the township engineer has asked them to dedicate, then that becomes the property line that's higher than 1 foot candle. We've asked that they readjust their lighting so that it's at 1 foot candle or less there, because that future right-of-way is going to become their property line. Also, they have proposed LED bulbs. You've dealt with this before at the planning commission level. You've gotten them. All we're asking is that you do what you've done previously and allow those LED fixtures, and that they have similar color temperatures to the approved bulb types, which would be 24,000 to 35,000 kelvins. Finally, the lighting plan doesn't include information about dimming or turning the lights off after 11 p.m., as is required by the ordinance. In terms of signage, there's no signage proposed, so that would be under a separate permit. In terms of architecture, there are no regulations at this time that would regulate this proposal. However, the building height dimension hasn't been provided, and we would appreciate if that could be provided in any final site plan. There are several site plan criteria that you must find that the site meets. I'm not going to go through them one by one. The only one that I'm going to highlight is the landscaping. And again, that goes back to whether you feel that what's proposed is appropriate at this time to provide enough screening between the existing use and the improvements to the site and the assisted living to the south in the village. Also, another thing that you are asked to do is to make a recommendation to the township board as to whether require or waive the requirement for a development agreement. I'll defer to the township attorney on that one, but this may be a simple enough site that may not be warranted. So in final, the planning commission could grant approval with or without the conditions if it determines that the criteria for preliminary site plans are met, with conditions if you so choose. You could also postpone the action if you determine there's missing information that's necessary for your review. If that's the case, please direct the applicant to prepare revisions based on the review and provide guidance as to what additional information you would like to see and that are necessary. And finally, the planning commission could deny the approval if it determines the decision criteria have not been met. Again, we have 5 findings that we're asking you to do, and I've reviewed them over the course of the last few minutes. We also have a list of potential conditions. And when reviewing and preparing for tonight, I have to apologize to you. I realized that item 1 and item 4 and that list are the same. So if you're using that, please cross out one of those. I'd be happy to answer any questions or cede the floor to either the engineer, fire chief, or the attorney.
Great job. I mean, you covered everything. I've read it all, but it was a good refresher to go through it all. And I'm glad you mentioned the part about if we're going to put this into 4 different business locations within that building, they have to have by law the handicapped availability for each unit of what would be in there. So that would have to be worked out on their plan. If that is going to conflict with their parking requirements, then that has to be worked out on the plan. And then we still need a couple other people to get up and speak in regards to that. I have 1 or 2 questions about it. And I don't know if any other members have questions at this time or not. Let's get let's go to the fireman's fire marshal. I think I know BJ Grant's here. Sometimes my cursor gets on my cursor. Come on, baby. What do they do here? I'll get you here eventually. Oh yeah, see that sometimes on this page it just runs all over the place. All right, BJ, it's up to you at this point.
All right. Good evening. Our only issue with this site was access. It kind of becomes the way that they have it built for all intents and purposes a trap for a fire truck. If I end up having an incident or even a medical at that last, let's call it C or D, whatever that fourth one is.
Actually called. That doesn't matter.
Sure.
Southeast quadrant.
There's no way to turn around a fire truck, so you have to end up backing it all the way out, all the way around the building, which doesn't meet code. I have spoken with Brad. I think he's the engineer, and he actually had sent me another plan, which we were okay with.
You're saying it's a modification of what
yes, he modified it.
We don't have that in front of us tonight.
Sure. I'm not aware.
All right.
So,
let me ask a quick question.
Yes,
Are
sir.
you saying that you would be happy with what you saw as a modification?
I was okay with his modification. Essentially, at that southern drive, instead of going all the way out to the road, he's actually came back and made what would be like a hammerhead turnaround. So going back in, and we kind of come to it.
Well, I think what we'll do is we'll wait for Mr. Sharp to get done too, and then we can talk about anything that we might have concerns about as conditions on this plan and what we want to see in front of us.
Okay.
All right, you don't have any other things at this time?
That was it.
I know
Just
there's
sign
lane
it.
stuff and all your other stuff to be done on the site plan, unfortunately.
That's all I got.
Thank you for your input. Mr. Sharp, I think you're in here somewhere. If I can locate you.
That would be it. So obviously you have the letter dated February 21st. There's
I
a red
do
line.
have that.
There's a red line set of drawings in there. I mean, in general, this is an existing building.
Do you want to go to those drawings now, or?
No, you have them in there, so you see
The
the
red line,
comments.
the red line pretty good, I thought.
They'll be able to address those during the final engineering phase.
Okay.
I'll just run through a couple of the key items here that you guys always love to hear. Again, one of the things, as Megan had mentioned, this is an old parcel that currently goes out to the center of the road, and so we would be asking that they give up the 60-foot right-of-way that the road commission would like.
Over here?
Yep. So from that, then they have a 50-foot setback from that location. Unfortunately, it does not create a what's it, incompatible, or what's the word I'm looking for? When, doesn't create a hardship or anything on them, basically, that they can meet the 50
Oh, on the
foot.
profit, on the actual property owner, it wouldn't create a hardship to.
Correct. So we would be asking that they dedicate that 60-foot right away.
Okay.
Hey, Jim, with that related, so what happens if they say no?
Wait a minute, let's not go there yet.
Okay,
Then we'll sit there and argue about it, basically, is what it'll be. And everything will probably get held up, so. Let's see, a couple of the other items, site grading for preliminary and final site plan looks good. The sanitary sewer, it's already connected, it was an existing building, so it's already connected.
Down here.
That's storm sewer, I'm talking the
Oh,
sanitary,
sanitaries, where's that at?
sanitary line.
So it doesn't matter.
What's that?
It's already connected.
It's connected, correct. The same with the water. The water is also connected, it's connected to the village's
Do
system.
you happen to know what size it is?
The township water main doesn't go down there. What's that, the sanitary?
Yeah.
No.
So anything they do inside, they would
I
have.
think it's I think it's a 10-inch lead.
Oh,
I think it's a 10-inch, it's pretty big.
yeah, it's pretty big.
It says that the sanitary sewer is 12-inch village sanitary sewer.
That's the
Front,
main line, but I think the lead
10-inch
going into the
lead.
10-inch lead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's in your notes.
Okay. See? Well, I don't do all these reviews. I got guys who do it. I'm kind of like Megan. I just, okay, what my guys tell me?
That's not fair, is it?
So sanitary water are all taken care of there. Again, we deferred to the fire chief about their circulation. I did not see that plan that BJ had seen, but it sounds like it's, would be in compliance with what we would want to see as well. With regards to stormwater, they have to detain for the difference in impervious surface, which they are doing. They're proposing a pond on the west side. So that would be addressed. The calculations that they provided show that there's adequate stormwater detention back there. So I think most of it's going to percolate in the ground anyway. It's pretty sandy from what I recall. With regards to the pavements and so forth, a few things to clean up, but there's already a safety path on the property, so they don't have to worry about that. And some striping, some things like that in front of the man doors that we requested. And then obviously Megan hit the ADA spaces as well. So all in all, from an engineering perspective for site plan, we have no objections to it. A few things again to clean up during the final engineering phase or for the administrative site plan approval at the end. Any other questions?
No, I think you did a great job. I mean, I read all your little notes, and I don't remember them by heart, but a lot of people didn't understand that right there's the right-of-way line. That's what we're describing for that 60-foot width right there. So that is important.
And that would match up with everything else that's on that
Right.
side of North Oxford Road.
And these, I think what you were trying to say is these needed to be striped off based on the fact that each unit would have to have one or two in their location for what they're doing to get in and out.
No, there's man doors there.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, to get out.
To get in
So
and
in the
out.
event of an emergency, you can't be blocking that space there. So yeah,
Right.
we want those all striped out.
Right. Okay, I got it.
Mr. Chair, can we ask, you asking for questions now, or?
We are asking for questions if anybody has.
Mr. Sharp, your item number 1 in your general write-up, it says this does not match Oakland County's records which show a single parcel in the same address or ID number, the bearing and distance and partial boundary lines on record, that the county do not match with the record bearings and distance on the plan. Can you elaborate on that, please?
So they have it shown as like two parcels, like split. So it's a big long, it's a triangle.
One of them's right here, parcel 2, and the other one's parcel 1.
Right. But that's not the way that the county shows it. I spoke with their engineer about that, and he agreed that what they had shown on the plan was incorrect, and that they're in the process of cleaning all that up right now to match what the county has on record.
So your legal description that you talked about earlier in your letter is not, it didn't match from point of beginning to point of where they went back, right? You didn't have the right description of the legal.
They have it as two parcels, and it's actually just one parcel.
Yeah, I saw that with one parcel ID number.
Yeah. So they have like 2 points of beginnings on there, two
Right.
on their
So
description.
that doesn't match up right.
Correct.
So you want all that taken care of.
Yeah. It should
We just
match.
don't have it yet.
Should
But
match with
you
what-
can do that through engineering.
Or a final site plan, I'm guessing generally what we've been doing is we have our preliminary site plan, we
Right.
did our final site plan. You have generally been approving those with some sort of conditions. And then they clean up those final site plan drawings, they bring them back in to the building department, to Cheryl. And then it gets circulated one more time between myself and the fire department, the attorney, and the planner, and we all kind of put our seal on that so that there is a final approved site plan without any red lines or anything like that on it. That gets handled administratively after you approve it with, generally,
I get that part.
you've been approving it.
Just want to make sure everybody else is with us on it. John?
Yeah, can one of the two of you go into detail about this EDA? The handicap situation, what do we need to address?
The ADA spaces?
Yes. Is it
No, let's not call it ADA because we're not federal government. Those are American Disability Act things. We use barrier-free design by state of Michigan.
Barrier-free, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess
don't
more
like to get
specifically,
too
Ms.
convoluted.
Mr. Noel, Megan, do you want to hit
Well,
that?
What I'm trying to do is make a little list here, and it came up, and I was writing, and people were talking, and I want to make sure I understand.
Yeah, I think because of the way that they're dividing it, there has to be one barrier-free space per unit.
Unit.
Yes.
Good way of
Yeah.
saying it.
Yeah, so, what your zoning ordinance says is for the number of parking spaces that are there, it only requires one ADA space, because there's a ratio in there, or one barrier-free
Close
space.
enough, just call it accessibility.
Accessible, thank you. But if you are looking to strictly adhere to what the state of Michigan requires, there should be one accessible space as close as possible to each entrance for each unit.
Correct.
So,
I do have a question or comment, sorry. to
Well, I
interrupt you.
didn't finish.
and then the wrinkle here is that this is an existing building. So traditionally with an existing building, you try and get it as close as possible. But you could find, by the fact that they're adding doors and adding units, it's substantially changing the building, and then that they would need to have an accessible parking space at each entrance.
Right.
I will note, though, that this was not discussed with the applicant at the pre-application meeting, so this is a new design request for them at this time.
Mr. Spiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my question is going relative to parking. How is this any different than Legacy? I mean, there's a lot of doors at Legacy that do not have barrier-free parking right next to them. A lot. How do we do that?
And again, that was probably done under purview as an existing building. They have X amount of spaces to meet the need, but yes, they didn't, you're correct, that they did not divide that up and have one in front of each one of those units. Otherwise, the whole front would be all barrier-free, correct? Yeah. Good point.
To that end, also, I wasn't here for the Legacy's approvals. However, I do know that you had ordinance changes over the last year, specifically a very big raft of them.
Absolutely, it was monstrous.
In August 2022, and I believe changes to that language around barrier-free compliance were changed at that time. But I defer to Mr. Berger and Mr. Knowles because they were on the ORC.
We went through way more than we wanted to, but we did a pretty good job in a short period of time. Mr. Ballard, excuse me, Mr. Turner.
Mr. Berger, I have some questions for the owner. This facility you're dividing into 4 sections. What type of businesses do you expect to bring into those facilities?
I think it would be appropriate for contractors, plumbers, electricians, that sort of thing. That's the concept anyway.
Okay.
You know, they're going to be about 3,200 square feet.
So it wouldn't be a small machine shop or
well, I suppose that's possible.
something like that.
Yeah.
Then my concern is, depending what you bring in there, is what plans you have for noise reduction.
Well, they all have
whatever
to,
that equipment would
sure,
generate to the outside.
and they all have to apply for an occupancy permit, so they would still be subject to the rules and regulations, correct? I mean, the occupancy.
That is
could be
correct.
denied.
It's an I-1 use group, excuse me, I-1 zoning classification. And they would be allowed to develop with what is allowed in the I-1 zoning classification, but with restrictions as to what type of business it may be for noise and other things. So, go ahead, Megan, you want to speak?
Yes, and they would also have to meet all of your regulations in terms, I believe you have noise, performance regulations in the zoning ordinance, so they would have to abide by those. And when staff or consultants looked at the occupancy, we'd also look, sometimes we do ask for sound studies, to make sure that whatever went in wouldn't, especially when it's adjacent to residential, especially like this use, we might ask the applicant for a sound study just to be assured.
Someone had a question down here earlier. Mr. Noel, was it you? I thought it
Well,
was you, Mr. Ballard.
No. One of the things that I am concerned about is the screening between the north property, which is your property, and the south property, which is your neighbor to the south. And I would like to see the maximum amount of screening that we could put in there comfortably, just because of the tenants to the south.
So you're talking about the green belt stuff?
Yeah.
Which is kind of like, this is their proposed plan at the moment. They're, you know, with these right through here, and then I gotta move this over a little bit. So then they did, this is their detention, where's my cursor? This is their detention basin here, where their storm drains are coming from this way to this way to this way, and this one dumps in here. And then they put more screening back here, and they have some screening on the north, a little bit here. And they actually have kind of what's existing out here right now. Of course, that's road right away. You can't put anything permanent within road right away. So, well, it's not, it's proposed, that's it, right there. You don't want to put anything permanent within it.
Mr. Chairman, another question, that, because we're talking about landscaping.
Yeah.
What about irrigation? Is irrigation part of this?
I can't answer that. That would have to be, I don't even know if that's required at that point. I don't believe on an I-1 it is.
Just asking the question.
Our intent would be to irrigate.
Oh.
We don't typically plant all those things and let them die, so.
You know, Ian, and don't take this wrong, I mean, I'm very supportive of this. Like, you guys are talking about putting a new skin on it, you're talking about paving this or concreting or marking. I would really be curious to see the modification so the fire department is happy. And maybe my opinion would be, if we postponed this for a minute or two, and we came back with a drawing that kind of met the requirements of everything you heard this evening, that might be beneficial.
I actually thought you had that already. I don't know why you don't, why it wasn't brought to you, because that was covered at our pre-site plan meeting.
It was?
Yep.
I don't know that.
Because it was after the deadline to submit the drawings.
Oh, it was after, so they couldn't go through in time to put it out for a public meeting?
Correct.
Okay. We have time restraints for these to have documents in place before we can have
I
it.
understand.
Yeah, okay, that's just a comment from me. I kind of like to see the conditions taken care of a little bit better sometimes when I don't know what's going on. I've never seen any other drawings yet. And I do want to make sure we can get EMS and everybody in there if we have to. So,
This young man wants to go.
Mr. Spitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with many of your comments. To me, without seeing that, to me, it's a showstopper for final. But I believe we're here for preliminary and final.
Correct.
Personally, I have no issue if we want to give them preliminary so you have an idea.
With all the conditions.
With all the conditions, and then we postpone the final, or, because I think it's on the agenda, or table the final, and so you have to come back with all those conditions met. That's kind of what I'm
John,
thinking.
is that what you were trying to do, is come up with all
Well,
those
Mr.
conditions?
Chair, what I've done is I've talked with our consultants, and I prepared a motion to table this, but I've also prepared in that table with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things that we have talked about tonight that we would like to make sure that you were aware of, that we'd be interested. And if you'd like me to just zip through those, I could, if you like,
Well, I guess-
or would you wanna
I
wait?
guess just from a point of order, I would like to see us, formalize that in some way by either approving a preliminary with those conditions so that you have them and they're in the record, and you can come back that final, and then for tonight, so you basically have two motions. One, you approve the preliminary, but table the final.
Postpone it.
Postpone, however you want to word it.
I mean, when I go back to Megan's comments, when she put down the potential conditions in there, I think if John if we look at that page right there with those, potential conditions, because it mentions everything about, the approval by the township engineer, the fire chief, it talks about everything with the light intensity along the future road right away and all that. So I guess with the different conditions that she put in there, if we listed all those, it would have to be part of the motion. But then it looks like it would cover everything we kind of discussed. I guess I'm looking.
There's a tremendous amount here. I don't know if I would be interested in doing the preliminary. I would like to see the drawings brought up to date. I'm prepared to make a table of the preliminary and final site plan with these eight areas that we talked about that the applicant can be aware of when they go back to make their drawing change. So why don't I kick this
Mr.
off?
Chairman,
Yes,
just so you're clear, if you're going to postpone it, it would be to a specific time. If you're
Yeah,
tabling it, you have no idea when
No,
you're ever
it
gonna
would
take it
have-
off the table.
I would never do that unless we went to a specific time. Because
If you table it, it requires a motion to take it off the table,
Yeah, we're
just
not
so you
gonna-
know.
I wouldn't even want to see that recommendation. I'm inclined to go with what Mr. Spiz talked about, if we could get everything in place with the right number of conditions that had to be met, so we could get them through a preliminary site plan approval, to let them move forward and make all these conditions happen, and then they come back in and we do a final site plan. I think that we could do that. Megan, you want to comment?
There's just two items in terms of your findings that are outstanding. Is number one, the reduction of the parking lot spaces as proposed.
Right.
You could give the applicant some idea about that. And then I don't feel like you had consensus on direction for the landscaping in between, along the southern property line. I've heard some planning commissioners say they want more, and I've heard some planning commissioners seem to indicate that they feel it's fine as proposed.
Well, me personally, I drove up there, so I was kind of looking at, like you said, it's with the elevation change and some of the fencing that's there and stuff already. I don't know that I would be opposed to what I saw in that earlier plan with their landscaping that was shown. It looks like it could possibly be enough for me. I don't know that parking is critical to me, because you never know what kind of people are going to be in there using those 32 to 3,500 square foot spaces. So, and as long as we can meet the accessibility rules and have enough parking for the type of use that goes in there, because I think what's going to happen is they're going to take these interior components, like he said, if it's a contractor, electrical guy, he's going to store product in there, he might have some vehicles in there, he might have things in there, and not that many employees that they would actually have people and staff. So I think we could probably look at parking with a slight reduction, because we have the ability to do that. And we just have to note it accordingly, but I want to see a lot of stuff on that final site plan that meets what we're looking for. And I'm not opposed to I was earlier thinking maybe I didn't want to see a preliminary site plan approval, but it lets them move forward, like Mr. Spiz said, he just kind of changed my mind. So it lets them move forward and get us to where we think we want to be, and then we get this product done. So I think it could be beneficial for everybody, including the township, to clean this site up, for goodness sakes. I mean, I've driven by it for 20 years, and it's looked like that forever, I think.
It looks worse now without the signs.
Right.
Since they take it.
Right.
So just to make sure everybody's comfortable with the 18-foot spaces that are adjacent to the yard, and the applicant can proceed in confidence that you are amenable to that.
Mr. Chair, I've got a list here that I'd like to just bring up for a real quick review.
Yeah. Well, we're open discussion, so.
Parking lot length, 18 foot would be acceptable. lighting to, light to supply with a dimmer and a timer, lighting. Light intensity along the road to, the ROW line would be 1.0. Refer to the modified fire access, 60-foot right-of-way line, the planning to clean up to match the county records, barrier-free design added to the drawings, and screen of the south boundary with irrigation. Now, I could put this in a motion to postpone this and have it come back, postpone the preliminary and the final site. We could put this in a motion to approve the preliminary and not, we don't even have to address the final.
Commissioner Arnold,
Yes.
may I ask please that it be the future right-of-way line for the 1 foot pig mill? And that be specified since there's an existing right-of-way line and a future right-of-way line on the plans. I think it was your second point.
He did mention the right-of-way line,
Yeah.
but you wanted to be specific to say future right-of-way line.
Yes, please.
And I think if you read this note number 5 right here,
It says future.
it says
60-foot right-of-way.
fixture location adjusted or shielding added to reduce light intensity along a future road right-of-way line, 1 foot candle. Right there it is. I think if we utilize the potential conditions of this summary that you put together earlier, right here, and then look in this other part above it, where we can waive parking requirements. I mean, this kind of says everything right now that we're discussing.
Can I just ask one question about the parking, about the 18 feet?
Yes,
right?
you can.
And one of the things that we're saying is that potentially it could be contractors, right? Contractors in just, is there ability to increase the length, because there is a little bit of room in the property in the back, is to increase it for the parking, because it is a tight spot, right? It's tight to get, especially if there is contractors in there, and most of contractors' vehicles are larger trucks and larger vans, which then are longer than the 18 feet. Is it possible to extend the parking lot and make it a little bit wider towards the west side? And then you wouldn't have to have that variation or the variant for the 18 feet.
Well, I'll have to talk to our engineer about that, but it is nose over parking, so that's over a green space. So that is most commonly allowed when it's nose over.
So I think when you look at your plan, see my little cursor, it's kind of hard to see it, but this is where you're talking about nose over.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have a curb line right here.
But
And it means you can hang 2 feet this way.
Correct.
So it means you get an additional 2 feet this way. So your 18 foot starts from here to the curb, and then with nose overs, 2 more feet. So you're really getting about 20 feet of parking space along all these.
But the ones to the on the building side, those are those
Right here, right here.
No, those are all 20.
Okay, all right, thank you for that
Those
clarification.
are all 20.
Gotcha. All right, so
Right.
now I'm okay. Thank
So
you.
I think
Yes.
really, in my opinion, with this right here, and being able to, like if you backed into one of these stalls, you'd be hanging out to there. I mean, so you
That's a
almost.
good explanation, so thank you. That's
Yeah.
something I did not.
Yeah. So to me, I'm okay with that part of it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
nothing's been mentioned about the safety path that goes across the front.
Well, it's existing.
There's an existing one, and is that an acceptable one
Yes, it is.
based on the requirements?
Yes, it is.
Okay. That's a critical one because of the high school.
Oh,
Yeah, just
I
up
agree.
up the hill.
Yeah, it's 8 foot wide in the township, and then it narrows down to a 5 foot sidewalk when it crosses the village limits, or just a touch north of it, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we have to make a decision if we're gonna make a motion or not, if we're gonna do a preliminary site plan approval with conditions, or if we're gonna do a postponement, or if see documents come back. How's the,
I think I would prefer the preliminary as well. I think it's just one point of clarification. Since the agenda does call preliminary and final, can we do just preliminary approval and not do anything on final?
Yeah, of course we can. Yeah.
Just have to put that in the
Well, we just,
motion.
right.
I'm okay with that.
Then I have one question. Would the final be approved administratively?
No, you have to come back.
Okay.
Because really, I mean, Mr. Chair, because we want
No,
to see the
you
updated,
would be back.
yeah, we want to see the
Fine.
updated plan, the parking. And
I mean,
I still-
reality-wise, this evening, in my opinion, there were a lot of discrepancies that needed to be resolved within this plan. I mean, it's great you guys are coming forward with something to do for that building, and I'm for it. Mr. Dan Davis actually is involved in this project too.
Yeah.
He does normally pretty good work when he's done.
That's great work when I'm
Only
involved.
because I know. But, you know, it's the idea behind it. I think it'd be good for all of us, including the community, to get this site cleaned up. So I'm for it 110%. But then I was concerned about the fire department review comments. And I knew Mr. Sharp could work everything out on what we had to do on his part. I do think about light intrusion because these people are residents directly to the south. So light intrusion is very important to me on this site. So we don't want to get too bright past those property lines. We want to keep those down to a tone. I don't know that we would have to have a timer to do that. I think if we had the lighting done accordingly and we had less than so much intensity at nighttime, I think it'd still be okay.
Mr. Chair, I disagree with you on that, sir,
Because of the,
because of the south residents. There's residents on the south.
okay, then I'm not going to tell you not to change your motion,
I'm writing it right now.
okay?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion. I might need some help. I move to approve the preliminary site plan for PC file number 23001, known by project name 411 North Oxford Road. I'd like to include a reference in this approval, the Kelly firm letter dated February 27, 2023, Oxford Fire Department letter dated February 23rd, 2023, Carlisle Workman letter dated March 1st, 2023, and the Mr. Sharp letter dated February 21, 2023.
Yeah.
Also, I'd like to make reference to the following. Irrigation, we talked about irrigation. We talked about the berry-free design. We talked about plan to clean up to match the county records, which is covered in some of the letters that we have. We talked about the 60-foot right-of-way line for the future road right-of-way. Referred to the modified fire department, which we have in that letter. Light intensity ROW line to 1.0. Light to supply with a dimmer and a timer for the lighting. And then we would be looking for the waiver for the parking lot length of 18 foot would be acceptable. I'm good.
I'll support.
I have a motion by Mr. Knoll with conditions and support by Mr. Spiz for approval of a preliminary site plan this evening for this development known as 411 North Oxford Road at this point in time. Is there any discussion on this motion before we, so we're all on the same page here? I mean, I'm supporting it, but I want to make sure we're clear on what he said in the latter part of it. Well, he quoted every letter, including the Carlisle Workman findings. So, and I'm pleased with all these, the way they were spelled out. So if we get all these taken care of, including the fire chief and the engineer and everybody in regards to this, and did you talk about the, just so that we're on the length of the parking spaces, was that mentioned in that?
Yes.
Okay, so then,
The only thing he didn't mention was the final site plan, which is not being approved tonight, I assume.
I can make a separate motion on that after this one's done.
yeah, we should be able to do that, right? I mean,
You vote on the first motion.
Pardon me?
You have to vote on the motion, the first motion that's on the floor, and then you can vote to postpone the final site plan approval.
Thank you, appreciate it. Well, then, Susan, I'd like a roll call vote.
Turner,
Yes.
Spiz,
Yes.
Noel,
Yes.
Ballard,
Yes.
Berger.
Yes,
Motion passed.
now we need another
Mr.
motion.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion. I move to postpone the final site plan for property BC file number 23-001, known by project name 411 North Oxford Road.
When are you postponing it to?
I had my calendar out.
Let's see what we're gonna be going to now. You probably can't do it to the 23rd because that's too quick. We can't do anything to then. You would have a meeting in April on the 13th. You would have a meeting on the 27th.
Mr. Chair, I know I have to finish my motion up. Would the 13th of April work for you?
Yes.
I make the motion to postpone it until the 13th of April, which is a Thursday night.
Yes, it's Thursday the 13th in April.
A second.
We have a motion to postpone the final site plan approval to April 13th of 2023, as supported by Mr. Spiz. We'll call a roll call on that too.
Noel,
Yes.
Spiz,
Yes.
Ballard,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Berger.
Yes,
Motion passed.
thank you. Okay, next is communications and/or committee reports, but we kind of do. Mr. Nolan and I met with Megan and discussed a lot of things about ORC. We looked at what we thought would be priorities of necessity coming into the near future. And we created a priority list based on what we think is important to get out of the way. We did so much work in 2022. So we're going to get back at it. Our next meeting date is coming up on, I forgot the date, but it's soon.
On the 16th.
16th,
Next
right?
week.
Yeah, 16th.
On the 16th and the 23rd, due to my.
So we are having a meeting on the 16th. And that's all from ORC. I don't think we have anything from Economic Development Committee yet. Yes, Mr. Nolan?
In regards to the board meeting last night, we're going to see the MI homes on Market Street and Waterstone come back to the planning commission.
In March.
Yes.
No, excuse me.
I'm sorry.
In May.
Thank
I just got the date from Cheryl earlier today.
So what happened? Yes.
That it went to the board and it had additional conditions that was offered by the applicant. And because there were additional zoning conditions, it has to come back to the planning commission for a review.
Correct. Next would be, do we have any planners or Carlisle Warman reports? Mr. Sharp? Megan?
Sorry. Said planner and I got up.
I made a mistake because then I said, I should have just said from Megan.
That's okay. On your upcoming agenda on March 23rd, you have a rezoning for a parcel that's owned by the township. It's owned by the Parks and Rec. It's part of the Seymour Lake Park. The area where there's a house off of Coates Road, they are proposing to split that off, and they would like that to be rezoned to R3. So that'll be before you at that date. Since that is a light agenda and you're having a meeting, was wondering if we could do a training at that point in time. I understand you haven't had a training in a while. You have some new members on what's master plan, planning and zoning essentials, et cetera. So I wanted to ask the board if that would be fine to put that on that time. The training would last no more than 45 minutes to an hour, depending on the number of questions you had.
What's that date again?
March 23rd.
March 23rd?
I want people around when we do that.
Okay.
What's the purpose of having that training? I think we should.
Be here?
I'll be here on March 23rd.
Okay.
Then thereafter, I won't be here for a little bit.
Okay.
But it might be better to postpone that yet until we know we have people present. I think we'll have Mr. Hunwick back. I think we'll have Mr. Bailey here. And I think the rest of us, I don't know if Mr. Turner's taking any more time out, but he'd probably be here.
I'll be here.
John will be here, so I think Mr. Ballard, will you be around in the near future, like in a month or so?
In April.
So, the end of.
It'll be a normal meeting day.
Yeah.
But she'll do a training, we'll do a training process in the meantime. Light agenda.
The end of March or the end of April?
It won't be the end of March, we can't do it then.
Okay, the end of April, I'm more open towards the end of April.
Okay, so that sounds better for us to wait. We might even have to do it the first meeting in, well, what do we have in May? That one, we just have the M1 homes coming at us,
The
right?
conditional rezoning would be.
That's it though, right?
at that-
That I know of right now, right, Cheryl? All right, she's in the background, so I'm just picking on her.
Mhm.
I got my letter on the parks, on the property today about the rezoning.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because I live nearby. Okay,
And the other report was the zoning amendments that were before the township board that you recommended, I believe, in December, were passed for their first reading at the township board meeting last night. So they will go to a second reading at the township board level. So all that hard work.
so that's all the stuff with the non-residential PUD and all that?
Yes.
Oh, good,
Yes.
great. And we'll get that moving forward, and I think it's gonna help us out in the future.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. Cool.
Okay.
Well, that's it for planners reports. I think we're ready for adjournment. Or do we, I'm sorry, Mr. Sheriff, did you want to say something tonight? Because you normally, you were here, you sat there all that time. Go ahead. Thanks, dude.
I timed that perfectly. I came in right at the end of the
I
marijuana
saw what you
discussion,
did.
you
I
know?
thought you were out there having one.
I had an idea that would happen.
I thought you were out there having one. That's why you came.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of which, I'm just gonna give you a few updates on some of the projects that have come through this and the come through this committee and the status of them. So 1125 South Lapeer Road, that's a curative one, we'll call it marijuana number 1. That one's been approved for engineering.
Oh.
And they are just working on their Eagle water main and their MDOT permits. So that's what they're waiting on right now. The old Mazda 653 South Lapeer Road, marijuana number 2. We're looking at just awaiting some revised engineering drawings on that. I think they've been doing some demo and some work inside.
Yeah, they've been doing demo
already. So that's where that one sits right now. 280 North Lapeer, the old McDonald's site there, the same thing. We just received their revised engineering drawings today. So I'm guessing within the next week or two, assuming Mr. Butler cleaned those up, then those should be onward to, again, MDOT and Eagle for the permits that they need for their water going on there.
When do they all break ground?
Excuse me?
When do we expect them all, the two to break ground?
We will not hold a pre-construction meeting until
He
they
gets
have
the
all their permits
finalization.
in place, and
Yeah.
Mr. London will not release the building permits until we have a pre-construction meeting. So it's really dependent on getting those permits. I'm assuming as soon as they get those permits, they're going to be in here the next day wanting to break ground on.
It's a rough guess.
I would say within the next 60 days, probably 60 days away still. I think Eagle will be fine. It'll be MDOT that's going to hold each one of those up there. Difficult as I'm finding out on one of our own personal projects, or one of our sewer projects. Taco Bell also, they just resubmitted their revised engineering drawings. There's a few things to clean up there. So they submitted those today. So we should be getting those coming through. Again, that's going to need an MDOT permit and an Eagle permit for the water main. So it could be another 60 to 90 days on that one before they break any ground. McLaren, the urgent care, same thing. A lot of stuff coming through right now. Mr. Butler must be turning these things around pretty quickly. So those just came through again for their revised minor cleanup items, and then they'll have to start their permit process. Megan mentioned Market Street rezoning. Last night at the board meeting, they approved a contract to drill a new fire well for fire station number 3. If you guys know where that is, it's up on Lapeer Road. So we'll be getting that one going shortly. They also approved, they have a capital improvement committee here at the township. And one of the things that they approved last night was to essentially redo all the parking lots, driveways, and some additional improvements here at the township offices. So they'll be moving forward on that, putting that out for bids here. Yeah, Mr. Nold, would you like to?
I think we approved it, the parking lot was to go out for.
For bids.
For bids. Yeah.
For bids, yeah. And then they're gonna see where it falls, but yeah, that will probably be coming forward here in the next few months in the summer once they get going. The township board also approved a new safety path master plan. The safety path committee had gotten together and moved some of the important, what do we call them, the priorities around on some of the paths, and we also added some pathways throughout the township. So before we just showed paths that we felt were priority in the nearby area, essentially what we've done now to kind of coincide with the zoning ordinance, so we basically show future safety paths on every, we'll call a major road in Oxford Township. So whether it's on Oakwood Road or Delano Road or those types of roads, it just gives you a little bit more, I guess, leverage, or at least it kind of stays more in compliance with what we require. And we always require a safety path to go in, correct? So now it's actually shown on a plan as well. So a developer couldn't come in and say, well, it's not shown on your master plan, why do you want it? Well, it's pretty much shown on all of them now, on all the major roads, Baldwin Road, those kinds of things. And then most recently we had a pre-application meeting for the Tullamore North development. This would be the piece of property that's opposite the golf course on the north side of Drainer Road there. So they're probably going to be coming forward with some drawings too. They're doing some multifamily up front, and then some single-family residential in the back. So that'll be coming forward as well. Pretty
Sharp, not to correct you, just to add to help, that would be coming as a PUD?
They'll have to come as a PUD, yes, because they're combining some attached buildings, multifamily up front, and then the single-family in the back. So yes, that will be a PUD, which is now in place thanks to you guys and the ordinance. So that's what I got. Anything else?
I don't know, it sounds busy to me.
It's very busy right now.
I'm not sure the building department's gonna like all that.
Oh, they're gonna like it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Anything else? Our turn.
Would you like to speak this evening?
I have no comments, other than I will probably be on maternity leave when you do the training. Megan and I have discussed doing a joint training. So you'll probably have my colleague Morgan here
Well,
to
good
do
for
it.
you.
Thank you. My
Yeah.
portion, I focus on Open Meetings Act compliance and general meeting decorum, just to do a refresher for the board if you haven't had that training in a while. So,
I think it's always good.
yeah,
It brings people back together again.
of course.
Yeah.
But you may not see me for a little while after April.
I was so embarrassed at the last meeting because we did a vote and we didn't have a full planning commission member group here. And we needed 4 votes instead of 3 to make a rezoning change. So we have to have 4 votes to do a rezoning change. Now we know that, so now I won't forget that.
Read your bylaws.
I know it's in the bylaw, but I got confused and I thought, wait a minute, because some things you can do with 3 votes.
Yep, that's
You
true.
know, with 5 people or something, but then all of a sudden I said, man, I really messed that up, so we didn't want to wait until we had legal counsel look at it and tell us what we really needed.
Lucky for you, it's coming right back.
Well, lucky, yeah, I heard about it. I heard it is coming back. Mr. Knoll told me about it. All right, thank you for everybody tonight, including you, Mr. France, thanks. Thanks, ladies. Mr. Sharp. Cheryl, I love it. We're adjourned.